Workers are losing their jobs quicker than they can find new ones. The main problem in this debate is that the destruction of jobs is too unpredictable and too quick for humans to adapt. In a world where we value the livelihoods of laborers and workers, proud to propose. What does our model look like first and foremost? We would strongly discourage companies from replacing any human job with automation. Three specific proposals. First and foremost, we would introduce higher severance pay for companies that are at risk of replacing their workers with technology in order to prevent mass layoffs. Secondly, we would introduce regulations that would require corporations to retain a significant portion of their human workforce. And finally, we would make the prices of new technology incredibly high by taxation, as the government proposing a sin tax on these technologies that gradually decrease over a long period of time. Note that our policy is not an outright ban of automation or replacing workers with technology. The big difference is that automation would be made more gradual and painless through limits placed on companies on our side of the house. First argument then about how the government has a principal obligation to intervene and protect workers from the impacts of unrestrained company practices. That is to say, when workers' rights and livelihoods are compromised by companies' decisions to replace human labor with automation, the government is obligated to intervene and prioritize worker protection for three reasons. Firstly, the primary role of the government is to ensure the welfare, safety, and the security of its citizens. In its context, it must prioritize the needs and welfare of the working class, which constitutes the majority of society. Workers form the backbone of the economy and the community, while benefits of the unchecked corporate freedom primarily serve a smaller, more privileged group. Therefore, the government has a responsibility to protect the greater public's welfare over the profits of a minority. But secondly, there's a great power imbalance between corporations and workers. We ought to reject this because companies set terms that workers have little choice to accept. This power disparity is especially harsh for workers in blue-collar and replaceable positions who may face imminent displacement by technology without the bargaining power to secure their rights. This imbalance renders these workers especially vulnerable, so it's the state's obligation to protect these people. But thirdly, even if interfering with the free market may lead to some economic loss in the short term, governments must weigh quality of life considerations that extend beyond pure economic gain. For example, governments regulate companies that harm the environment, recognizing that the free market fails to account for environmental costs. Similarly, in cases where corporate practices undermine labor rights, the government has a duty to correct this by protecting workers. The role of the government is not blindly prioritize the efficiency of the free market, but to balance corporate efficiency with the well-being of its people. Second argument then about how these limits are necessary to protect workers' rights. Unchecked, the ability for companies to replace workers with technology poses a significant threat to workers' livelihoods in four distinct ways. Firstly, and intuitively, workers who lose their jobs to automation are left without a steady source of income, which is particularly alarming for many lower and middle class families who live paycheck to paycheck. For these individuals, even a single month without work can threaten their family's basic sustenance and security. But secondly, technological displacement frequently occurs across entire industries, which is to say, when a worker is laid off because of their role has been automated, they often struggle to find new employment as their skills may no longer align with the viable jobs. Skills and jobs replaced by technology are rarely transferable to other fields, leaving these workers with limited alternative options to maintain their livelihoods. But the most importantly, technological advancements happen rapidly and workers are not given enough time to retrain or upskill. Even when they see potential changes ahead, the window to transition to new fields is often too short to ensure job security, leaving them vulnerable to sudden income loss. This creates a cycle in which workers are constantly racing with technology without being able to adapt. Workers not only face short-term harms of losing a month's income, but a cycle of continuous losses. This is particularly harmful because technological advancements are likely to be even quicker than past technological advancements, like the invention of the computer or phone, limiting the ability for workers to adapt at all. But finally, the pace and direction of technological development are highly unpredictable, making it nearly impossible for the average worker to anticipate whether their job will be replaced and prepare accordingly. This is to say, even white-collar workers from more privileged backgrounds are able to be impacted by the spread of technology. For instance, only a few years ago, it was widely believed that creative jobs like artists would be immune to automation, yet AI-generated art has gained popularity and taken over human artists. This unpredictability leaves workers in a constant state of certainty regarding their security of employment and the viability of any alternative work for them. With government policies, we're able to largely control this spread. Conclusion here is that limiting companies' ability to replace workers with technology would not entirely prevent displacement, but it would significantly slow the process. This is crucial as it allows workers to maintain stable incomes for a longer period. Innovation is only beneficial insofar that it helps vulnerable people and the majority of people to lead better lives. Controlling the spread of automation is the way to go. Proud to propose.
Whether government likes it or not, automation is going to happen one day. Then, this debate is about who gives more time and resources to workers to develop transferable skills. So with the pressing global challenges that society has to face, like climate change and pandemics and food shortages, they're exacerbated by demographic winter that jeopardizes our labor force. So we oppose all policies that slow down automation. But before arguments or even responses, our counter model is a twofold. First, we suggest mandating generous severance packages for job training and recruitment priority during structural unemployment periods. Note that our alternative cannot be co-opted by proposition because of limited social political capital to coerce companies' adherence to state requests. So once the limitations are over, companies have no incentive to support the past generation of workers. But secondly, we envision progressive corporate tax on all companies who gain significant revenue through automation. Tax revenue from new values that companies create will fund social infrastructure on an unprecedented level. We create a society where people work less and get more. Some quick responses first then. I think Rachel's main fiat is that automation takes jobs away. I think this is just plainly not true, given that automation also creates jobs. The jobs that they're taking away are repetitive and low paying, and they're often really harmful and dangerous. If you really want to protect people, you would allow them to have access to jobs that are safer and higher paying and evolving. So if governments care about people, then they should do that. This is something that only happens on our side of the house when we allow automation to take its natural course. But first, argument about how we better integrate workers into the new labor market. First thing I want to say here is that automation doesn't merely displace jobs, but it replaces them with new ones. We see roles like robot maintenance or automation engineers alongside non-AI jobs like content creators and remote work coordinators. So note that many of these roles did not exist 10 years ago. But secondly, why does the proposition model not allow the smooth transition of workers? There are three ways how this happens. First is because companies have higher production expectations with the rise of automation, employees face more working hours and they face more responsibilities. Note that these workers would only be repeating non-transferable skills and they'll not have time nor space to develop new skill sets in the long term. But second thing I want to say here is that employees would not have leverage to negotiate for better wages. This is important because companies can replace workers in cases of voluntary resignation. There's less social political capital by chat for labor strikes because of uncertainty. Hence, their income can't make enough surplus to afford job training or education alongside living costs. But see, I think companies who want to re-educate past employees to have new roles will be discouraged from doing so. As in, given that in our model, companies retain talented workers with knowledge of the industry and internal processes, that the impact of that is that allows workers to learn transferable skills with the company's resources, and that means that they have better wages once they move to a better and new position that gives them a higher salary. The imperative here is very simple. It's that workers can practice and they can develop new skills during structural unemployment. So since Rachel agrees that this limitation cannot be permanent, I think the workers that they claim to protect still lose jobs in the inevitable future because AI development is inevitable and it's growing really fast. I think proposition doesn't guarantee them the skills and grant them the skills to survive afterwards. We provide to a sustainable model of integration. But second argument really quickly about how it's urgent to automate industries in the face of global challenges. And this is because of three reasons. Firstly, the benefit of automation is that it enables us to collect and analyze and leverage vast amounts of data with unprecedented efficiency. As in, the benefit is that it propels faster product output and it has quicker refinement of essential tech. And this is very good because it gives birth to very vital solutions and innovative solutions. We already saw this happening. Like, for example, this looks like society developing drought-resistant crops or life-saving vaccines where they have carbon sequestering machines that are only possible through automation exclusively. But secondly, I think automation advances more sustainable practices and that mitigates environmental impact, as I'll explain later. But I think it optimizes resources utilization and reduces waste and improves energy efficiency. This is a benefit because companies are incentivized to do this since it cuts costs and it helps their corporate image, which all companies really want at the end of the day. But thirdly, I think the resources and the subsidies that are given for farmers or green tech or healthcare and whatnot, they're all results of cost-effective innovation and economic productivity. So without automation, we cripple all of these essential initiatives. This is important because global challenges don't wait for us to catch up. They claim lives actively and they threaten our future actively. So the longer we hesitate to embrace automation, we hinder the ability to adapt and respond to critical challenges. Very proud to oppose.
Protection of the vulnerable will always outweigh the pleasure of the rich. For protecting the most vulnerable, the most crucial stakeholders in this debate, so proud to propose. I want to start with a clarification then. Government bench is not against innovation, efficiency, and production, or even the development of automation technology. The fact that these technologies are so efficient and profitable means that these technologies would be developed and eventually implemented, even if companies are limited in the ability to immediately replace their workers. What we are defending is maintaining a balance between the efficiency and innovation that is achieved through these technological developments and the ability of the average citizen to have some stability and predictability in their livelihoods and to be safe from immediate displacement. So proud to propose. Onto some rebuttals then. Opposition tries to mitigate our arguments by saying that labor regulations already exist. Simply pointing to current labor laws doesn't address the scale of impact that unrestricted automation brings, oftentimes because this is unpredictable. This was mechanism in the first argument that my PM gave you. But also, traditional regulations weren't designed for the speed and scope of tech disruption. They failed to prevent mass job loss in sectors like manufacturing and retail. We've already seen that in the past. On a comparison, our side acknowledges that the level of innovation and speed of technological improvement is something that governments have not predicted. Therefore, opposition has the burden to prove why such laws based on previous circumstances should be applicable to the current climate and what's going on in the status quo. Their main push to victory, though, is about like good innovation and productivity, basically. First response here. While automation can improve productivity, it often replaces entire job categories rather than augmenting them. In sectors like retail, manufacturing, and customer service, automation eliminates roles that have limited transition pathways, leading to mass layoffs without sufficient alternative employment. This also means that automation in the status quo is largely different from the past. The work that AI can do kills various jobs across sectors, making replacement different, especially for individuals who have been working in the same industry for a long period of time. Moreover, the government stance acknowledges that technology can enhance productivity, but this should not come at the expense of job stability. Severe limitations ensure that automation complements human work rather than totally replacing it, which we proved to is more likely, supporting workers in their roles instead of rendering them redundant. By treating all innovation as inherently positive, Ops stance failed to protect workers from the negative effect of automation, making their support for tech appear naive and one-sided. Lastly, on the point that we can train individuals to work with AI and therefore prepare them for the future, two responses here. Firstly, that's not that easy. Highly educated college students take years or decades to become a trained doctor. It's unclear why a blue-collar worker will be able to adapt these new skills quicker than the innovation and spread of technology takes. But secondly, workers being trained to enter new fields aren't paid during the training time. Rachael tells you that the people this policy impacts live from paycheck to paycheck. Opposition restricting income for even a month is extremely detrimental for these vulnerable stakeholders. On to our third argument then, that the limits on companies fosters a healthier society. A gradual approach to implementing technology offers numerous societal benefits, ensuring that technological advancement supports rather than disrupts social stability and economic health. Three reasons why this is true. Firstly, rapid displacement of workers would likely overburden government and community institutions, as sudden increases in unemployment place overwhelming demands on existing welfare and support systems. These programs are often inadequate to handle large-scale spikes in unemployment, putting institutions in crisis as they struggle to meet both the immediate needs of unemployed individuals and the long-term need for retraining programs. By slowing this process, limits on corporate automation give institutions time to strengthen welfare and implement programs that prepare a skilled workforce for future opportunities. But secondly, rapid automation displaces workers and reduces their income, which in turn decreases consumer spending power and lowers demand for goods and services, therefore disrupting economic stability. Slowing down this displacement retains stable employment levels, sustains consumer demand, and keeps money circulating in the economy, supporting a healthier market environment that allows businesses to actually thrive. This gradual transition ultimately benefits society by protecting the flow of money in the economy and maintaining stability in the face of technological change. Finally, the unchecked replacement of workers with technology tends to benefit a small group, primarily the owners and developers of technology, at the expense of the larger population that relies on labor income to sustain their livelihoods. This dynamic risks widening wealth disparities as automation concentrates economic benefits among a privileged few, while the majority of workers face job insecurity. Slowing the process of automation allows more individuals to adapt, helping to prevent social polarization and ensuring that the economic gains from technological advancement are shared more equitably. For this, we propose.
Strategic flaw is that they can't see the big picture. During the initial stages of the Industrial Revolution, people obviously lost their jobs and they were angry. But within a few months, people who previously worked in terrible factories that underpaid them and cut off their fingers, now those workers worked in brand new facilities, handling cleaner, better, and higher paying jobs. People will be able to take these jobs with similar skill sets because of our model that wasn't responded by Deputy Prime Minister. That DPM just ignored our entire case, which we tell you is a strategic flaw that you have to count. That's the comparative we are able to prove to you in today's debate. First, they show on the principle on the obligation to protect the worker. First, we see that this is an inevitable aspect of capitalism where creative destruction destroys old industries but gives rise to new industries and more job opportunities. Throughout history, technological, like I talked about, innovation has produced more jobs and more abundance that improves everyone's quality of life. Hence, preventing this transition is tantamount to rejecting the very Industrial Revolution so that people still produce things by hand. Then we outweigh government because their policy prevents better jobs and more new jobs from being created, which is a net loss for everyone in the debate. Second, you can't impede upon these rights because it's a free economy where the government cannot regulate anything as long as it's not illegal and as long as it's completely legal, right? And in this case, it is that. Third, government hurts more people in the long run because they prevent innovation. Two mechanisms I want to present here. First, on research and development. If products are cheaper to produce, there's more budget to do things like innovate, expand, and hire more human labor in the industry in the long run because the company has things like more money and sale. So under that mechanism, there are two benefits we provide to you. First, I think accessibility is improved. That is, we help customers who have now cheaper and better quality products because AI is able to produce the best. So that's how we help consumers. We win on that clash, unlike what Deputy Prime Minister tells you. Second, the benefits of innovation, like more people being hired and better products in the industry, expands to research and development, and that's exclusive because prop bench limits that, where now people have to, like, industries have to work on more expensive things like human labor comparatively, where industries can focus on cheap AI labor. That's why we help all stakeholders in the debate. Second, on our side, even if workers work few hours, they will enjoy increased wages from more profitable companies, like Annabelle was able to mechanize in her speech and Nayoon didn't respond to. But B, they're able to enjoy things like massive social benefits that decrease the cost of living and increase quality of life in the long run. Second issue on hurting workers and about like the changing AI, I'm not sure if that characterization is even correct. First, on checks and balances, there are two pieces of framing I want to present here. First, a lot of companies, especially big companies, provide benefits like unemployment insurance because that's how they bring more people into the company, since you have to create worker and business trust, right? Businesses that have money to care about social reputation and form a good social reputation as safe to work in, where even if you're fired because of automation, you have things like unemployment insurance. So that check and balance means that there's things like notices to let workers before they're fired that help them assets. So even if AI is unpredictable, when you're going to get fired is predictable. Or there's things like unemployment insurance provided by big companies like Samsung who have money to give to you. Second thing, I want to talk about the workers' benefit. First, on negotiation power. I think there's worse negotiation power on governments because, like, on government, each white-collar job is just another laborer with minimal capital and nothing to complain about, because if they do complain, they're just fired. Comparatively, on opposition, people have something to complain about, which is that now they can say, hey, AI taking our job is unfair. That's why you give them more capital and you give them more money, more power, and empower them to actually advocate for these things, right? Second, people don't get job changes and they can't get promotions on government because companies don't even change their job system and hierarchy on prop bench, and they don't do things like renovations and structural reforms because everything just stays the same. Government doesn't benefit the very poor people because they don't change anything and fail to make improvements. That's why even in their best case is the status quo, where poor people still work poor jobs, where poor people still are janitors and they get bullied. Poor people are still like eating ramyun and still eating extremely unnutritious things. They still suffer on prop bench. Comparatively, on op bench, the exclusive benefit you have to buy is that we give them a chance to like change their life by having new jobs, even if it requires short-term suffering, long-term for short-term.
Opposition side can live in the delusion that they are able to provide the best for everyone. The economy will prosper, automation will occur, and everyone will get the severance pay that they need. This is wrong, and that's why we propose. All right, first clash then on which side better protects workers' rights. This was really convoluted, and let me explain why government's opposition side strategy in dealing with this is extremely unrealistic. First, you may have laws about severance pay and labor laws, but that doesn't mean that they occur, meaning that the meaningless safety nets that you continue to place, firstly, not only increase the cost of switching to automation, because government has to concede, the opposition has to concede to some extent that there will be some form of harm to the economy to begin with, meaning to say that people will be losing their jobs. That's exactly why they spend all of this time trying to mitigate our points about job loss and saying that they also have severance pay. Firstly, if they're so scared of this, note that we still support automation, right? Meaning to say that what we do is that we make it more gradual so that the government eventually has more severance pay to provide for these citizens, right? What we're saying is that our side is actually more beneficial at achieving what government opposition side seems to want in this debate. Because what we're trying to say is that because you have more time to get you have more time to spend and you have more ability to try to prepare for these AI issues, there can be more, you are able to collect more funds in order to actually provide the severance pay to begin with. Opposition side seems to think that constantly this magical severance pay will be able to appear and support their citizens, when in reality, these are just vague and shallow points that say that they can do the same thing. Secondly, we support automation again, and but then the reason why we fulfill this is because our solution is more realistic. Meaning to say that firstly, when DLO talks about the Industrial Revolution, we would say that it's much different then than it was now, simply because back then we didn't have to care about labor rights. That's why it's so much harder for severance pay to exist in the first place. That's why it's not getting out. That's why in the US it's so horrible. What we're trying to say is that we don't have back then, because they didn't have to care about workers' rights, they were able to just get by, abuse workers, ruin their lives, and then just suddenly make it better as the technology got better and laws got better eventually. What we're trying to say is that we're we're trying to avoid what happened in the Industrial Revolution, meaning to say that we're actually trying to make a positive benefit on society rather than a positive benefit on society and respect these labor laws that now exist instead of rushing into things, abusing workers and detrimentally ruining their lives. Something which opposition side consistently neglects in the entire debate. They don't seem to realize that innovation and all of these things are maybe wonderful and they may eventually lead to a mass amount of benefits for the general public, but what it actually does to these workers is so detrimentally harmful because of the fact that now you don't have the ability, because of the fact that these individuals simply lose their jobs, and that's just so harmful. And that's why, and no matter how great it is, we still need to do their job to protect them, which leads me on to my second class on which side better fulfills its which government better fulfills its obligation to protect the people. What we say, Judge, is that we provide more tangible benefits and plans that are able to actively do these things, which means that sure, the government may have an obligation in the best case, if we by like a point that the government has an obligation to care about companies as well, we would say that in the long term the government still fulfills its obligation because in like a couple of ways. Firstly, because we've already explained how we already prioritize innovation. In fact, innovation happens better on our side of the house purely because of the fact that now you are able to make it happen more gradually. People aren't rioting against innovation because they think that it'll ruin their jobs. The government has an active plan to solve these issues rather than rushing into things and destroying everybody's livelihoods. What happens now is that instead of being inconsistent and saying, we're gonna have severance pay, but then these companies will still want to fire workers and create automation. What we're trying to say is that we're able to foster a plan for economic development and the development of automation and status quo to ensure that firstly the government is actually able to fulfill its obligation in a way that is planned out thoughtfully and in a curated manner that isn't just random, and secondly in a way that is able to tangibly make a difference on the automation industry without it being buried in complaints and economic distress from all this job loss. With all that, proud to propose.
The biggest question I want to ask government is, why should we slow down the progress of automation that's happening in the status quo? They're doubling, tripling the income created by companies, and when we're able to prove that the redistribution itself does happen at the end of the day, we're able to win. First question: which side better helps the people achieve their dreams and still have like income and whatnot? First, I want you to note that the biggest mistake with the government is that they're unable to understand the fact that we make people work less and still yet have money. This means that people are not forced into blue-collar jobs, and because they're less burdened to do so, they're now able to achieve their dream jobs and whatnot. This means that, for instance, because I couldn't be a writer in the past because it seems quote-unquote unproductive, now I'm able to do so because we have things like governments providing redistribution on massive scales, meaning that I still have a steady source of income to live up to. This means that their case itself is dying upon the fact that these individuals are unable to answer this. Then I think the slowing it down only hurts the workers because they will soon be too old to move and learn different industries, meaning that the slowing down process itself harms their own case, because we need these workers to understand that these AIs are inevitable, to understand that these AIs are also part of our future and like what government concedes to. Then I think what's most important in this debate is who allows these people to integrate, because AIs are going to be a very important parts of our lives in the future, meaning that the integration of AIs better happens under our model when we accept it and we allow it to foster on long periods of time without any burdens and without any regulation laws that they want to create. Then I think the weighing should look like this: being employed in an obsolete sector where there are no chances of wage increases, no new workers are being hired below you, versus working far less hours but still enjoying massive social perks due to aggressive social redistribution and whatnot. Their burden was to prove why that's not so likely when they're able to still fiat the fact that they're going to massively stop these big companies from developing in such a free market. I think we have the same fiat. Then I think what's important is how you're able to help these people still stay. Even if these people do not have jobs, like even in our very worst case, I think that's still not a bad thing, because individuals still get the payment they need. The individuals are still able to live up to their dreams they want to because they have the incomes necessary to do so. All those regulations and all those barriers are gone under our model when we're able to promote this at the end of the day. Then second question, which side has better innovation and whatnot. I want you to note that innovation is a very important part of this debate because it tackles things like environmental problems, viruses, and whatnot. I think it's factually true that AIs are just doing a better job than human beings in the work sector. That's why they're being a popular job option for companies to purchase in the status quo. That's why they've been able to replace humans at a very quick extent. This means that the fact that AIs are very successful models for these companies to consider proves that we need them in our society. They are the very models that are necessary to tackle things like environmental problems that are going to be very detrimental in the future. That's what I heard. No response from Whip or Deputy at all. Then I think the fact that these environmental problems still stand shows that we need things like AIs to tackle it better. For instance, looking for new renewable energy sources that actually match fossil and whatnot. These calculations are done better by AIs, and so sure, even if they feel that they do integrate AIs into some parts of their lives at the end of the day, why is it not enough? First, I think AIs are much more smarter, like I proved within the first two like we proved through the first two speeches. Then this means that AIs are going to continue to develop on very quick levels, like it is in the status quo. We are going to see faster models than ChatGPT in the future that are going to do all the calculations for you, that are going to do all the necessary jobs for human beings. Then what's important is how you collect these wages. How are you going to use it? When you're the ones that limit the development of AIs on very mass degrees, that's when AIs are unable to maximize its potential. That's when you are unable to help society have the maximum welfare, when companies have the opportunities to collect massive amounts of funds due to the redistribution things, and we could still provide income to these families. Therefore, we propose. Thank you.
Can't win because they hurt both consumers and workers, where you just keep them in a perpetual cycle of minimal innovation and suffering. The janitor at the factory is still poor and still suffers on government. The janitor on our side has better jobs like cleaning robots that pay much more, even if in the short term you go through some struggles. I just want to point out strategic flaws in government. First, they never address our model. We provide a twofold model. First, we provide severance packages for job training for workers who are replaced by technology, which means we're going to redistribute funds to ensure that they have the time and money to be able to be propelled into better jobs with better salaries. Second, we still have tax towards revenue, which will be relocated. That's why, to some extent, all their benefits on tax isn't exclusive. Second, they ignore mechanization, right? What did we mechanize? First, when companies become automated, they'll be massively more profitable than they are now. That means existing progressive corporate tax will place them in higher tax brackets, and our corporate tax revenue will increase manifolds. Furthermore, opposition pushes for even more progressive taxation in the form of new brackets. So if government can fiat punitive taxes on automation or whatever policy, I think OP should be able to fiat for more progressive tax. Second, OP creates a world where the government has enough money to fund social infrastructure, which includes things like social benefits, pensions, healthcare, and UBI, which now become viable options because people work lesser hours and live lives that are much more plentiful. Third, I think government artificially hinders automation, stopping society from actually gaining the benefits of the excess value of technology. For example, OP succeeds at helping the most marginalized low-income workers, even if they work few hours. Marginalized low-income workers will enjoy increased wages from more profitable companies, but they're also going to enjoy things like massive social benefits that decrease costs of living and quality of life. Fourth, I think even if corporations don't automate, it's harder to do things like research and development, which I was able to prove in my deputy speech, because you don't have the necessary funds. That's why things like company expansion is an exclusive benefit. Fifth, you must note the importance of our first argument that proves we are able to help these people integrate into these new jobs properly through Annabelle's mechanizations, which takes down everything government tells you, because we are able to prove that people will be able to readjust properly.
Our stance was incredibly simple from the start. Workers' rights are the most important metric in this debate. And because opposition cannot simply create the money to create a UBI policy out of thin air, because this motion happens under status quo, where governments are not even rich enough to pull its poorest families out of poverty, the benefits of workers comes with a direct cost of the free market, clear pop ballot. Then why do we win on engagement? 2 points. Firstly, I think Nayoon does a phenomenal job in explaining why all of opposition's mitigatory factors are simply unfeasible. The nuanced rebuttals that people have been that have been working with blue-collar jobs will not be able to enter the white-collar professions without losing a meaningful amount of pay stands to the end of this debate. But secondly, OP spends more time trying to defend their additional mitigatory policies than the benefits of automations. They try to help workers through severance pay and government taxation. We tell you these policies would deter companies from adopting technology in the first place, and therefore this stance is also criminally unstrategic because they concede to our principle. Further, we think that if they are trying so hard to mitigate the harms against workers, they should just adopt our policy instead. Meaning to say, the development of technology and the benefit of workers are exclusive to each other. Op bench cannot have it all. Then, what are unique contributions that win us this round? Firstly, I think that the lack of OP's clear benefits makes it much easier for us to win this round. That is to say, OP concedes to the fact that workers' rights are important and implicitly agrees that governments should then restrict free markets to the extent that it helps these workers. My biggest push stands to the end of the round when government concedes to our strongest pushable principle. But secondly, we tell you about the worsened wealth disparity on opposition. Only a handful of the most wealthy and privileged company owners would benefit in their world, and the discrepancy is not permissible. But most importantly, Nayoon tells you that people's livelihoods come from their jobs and the work they do. For example, a teacher may feel fulfilled while teaching their students. A critical service worker feels fulfilled by saving lives. Researchers are often satisfied when they make innovative progress. It is not OP's responsibility or decision to decide to take away the right for these people to feel fulfilled by their work. States should replace jobs after people feel confident to leave their jobs and have sufficient UBI. This is not possible under status quo. Very proud to propose.